All right, welcome into High Hope, everybody. It's good to be back, and it's great to have Curt Cobb back with us tonight.
Thank you.
Curt, you've been with us before, and it was such a tremendous session that we had together, and I'm glad that you're back. And I kind of want to touch on just briefly, kind of because you have such a great testimony, but kind of touch on briefly what we talked about last time. You but I really want to get into what God has been doing the last just couple of years, because I could be wrong in this, but the Kurt 3 4 years ago is not. I don't even I don't recognize that guy, or I don't
Mhm.
know that guy, and it's amazing to me, and it's kind of like me. I mean, it's the same with me. 3 years ago, I don't think you can say I'm where I am now, and it's phenomenal what God's doing in your life. And because I knew whenever you and Crystal for a short time lived over by my now wife Leanne,
Mhm.
and we really didn't know each other that well then. I knew of you, but I knew you're kind of going through some tough times. That was 6 7 years ago, probably, at
Yeah.
that time. But to see, just even in the last year, I mean, the last 2 3 4 years, but even in the last year, it's another level. So I want to get to that, because it's a miraculous transformation, and I think it brings such hope to people that's walked the paths we have.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, if you would just, I mean, kind of briefly touch on, go back. Let's start kind of with some of the tough stuff, maybe as a child and through your early adulthood, and then that you want to touch on. But I don't want to dwell on that all night. I want to kind of get to the good stuff.
Sure. Well, thanks for having
Mm,
me, by the way.
yeah.
Me and my wife, we think the world of y'all, and I'm so happy to see what you're doing. And
Mm,
yes, I mean, I'm seeing tremendous growth, and yeah, you can see um, when people change, they go through a little bit of a change. It's almost like
mm,
when somebody comes
mm,
back from war,
mm,
they kind
mm,
of got that eye of the tiger, or
yeah,
so to speak.
yeah.
Or I've been through a few things, man.
PTSD, Eye of the Tiger, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You
yeah.
just you look different, you seem different, and so I think what you're um, kind of talking about is over the past few years, definitely couple of years, I've been a lot more um, at the forefront of some things, and
Hmm.
just being. I've been involved. I've been used. I've been exposed, so to speak,
Yeah.
in things that the Lord is doing, and so um, you know it's awesome to see what God is doing. He's opening doors. He's using us. He's giving us some a voice and all. But it's I know now, just like people that have been through recovery and things, the the bulk of the growth is what took place before
Mm,
all of that,
yeah.
and we were at a time where I just I don't want to go through my whole life story, but
Mm,
I can just say from from a young age, I was exposed to a whole lot of things. I'm talking 5 years old,
mhm, mhm.
crazy things, and by the time I was 12, I had experienced um, many divorces. Both of my parents been married 3 times. My dad before his first before. He had met my mother, but still, it's just like those formative years. So many people are very familiar at
Mhm.
how impactful that can be on a young person, and then to go through that like multiple times. But you start growing up and feeling that toll and all. But then I get here a little bit later in life, and I start to get more of an understanding of things, and just realizing, man, it's no hard feelings, mom and dad.
Mm,
Life is tough,
it's tough. Yeah.
life is tough. And so, but, and God can use all of those things. But I wasn't raised in church, and went through a lot of different phases. I've been in, um, I've been in foster care before. I was adopted. Uh, briefly, and not my dad's um, first choice, but there was just a lot of pressure, and with like without going into things, it was like kind of, let this third guy have full custody. Let's do the adoption. My dad, just in not wanting to take us kids through so many things, said, okay, fine, do that, and that ended up being a terrible situation. I was abused, sexually, physically, and then obviously that all comes with mentally and everything else.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it it could take a toll on you. And so, growing up, we were on welfare. My mom was working a couple jobs and trying to take care of us. I didn't see my dad for years and years. And anyway, coming full circle, I ended up, God brought me to a place where I had to go and live with my dad, or things were getting really bad at school. I actually got kicked out of high school. I had to get my GED. And I mean, it was just trouble, just trouble at home, man. Trouble and and heaviness. I couldn't focus on schoolwork. I'm like trying to figure out, you know, how am I going to go to sleep tonight with one eye open? Because things are just crazy. You can't. Anyway, and so maybe somebody that hears this can resonate. It's just, and stuff builds, it builds, it builds. But then I have this amazing encounter with God. I fly over from California to Georgia, not by choice, but to go and live with my dad. And uh, I had some weed in my sock. This is the difference in airport security. Back then,
Telling our age
yeah,
now.
yeah. In my sock, I got drugs in my sock and a pipe and all, and I go through security and fly all the way over here and undetected. And just thinking, like I know. Of the church and the Pentecostal church, and I've been around it a little bit, but I remember thinking, like, I am not going to pray at that stupid church, man. And I started to harden myself. And if anybody's heard of Rage Against the Machine,
Yeah.
they're a hardcore band, and they had a song. I won't repeat it, but I had a mantra that was I just had it. I was getting it in me. I will not do what you tell me. I was just like prepping myself, and I go to church that first night. Got the Holy Ghost, man. It's just right away. Just trying, but that that's things. Some of the people with the hardest exteriors and just this biggest front is because you having to work really hard to hold back and fight all of the emotions and the turmoil that you're holding inside. And then to get in the real authentic presence of God, it feels like, oh, this is what I've been missing this whole time. And where my mom and dad were dealing with their own struggles, and I wasn't feeling, not to say that they weren't attempting things, but where I wasn't just like feeling what that must feel like to have a mom and a dad intensified and all wrapped up in one, just kind of take you and say, man, I love you. First of all, I love you, and everything is going to be okay. I got you from here. And there was something about just being able to feel that I was able to let go and just, okay, I'm going to run with this. And so everything was not good from that point on, though. It was wonderful, but I had to go through a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
And but I mean, God was everything. And I just was like, this is purpose. This is all of it. So I started just giving myself to church and ministry. And I was like, this is my purpose. I felt like a nobody, and now this is my purpose. But I also still had so much baggage in me, so many things inside of me, things that I'd carried with me this entire time. And then going up even into my 30s, like, wondering why I was still struggling with so many things. And so I go through this time of, God using me. I mean, my giftings, my abilities, and doing all of that, and then everything just crashed. I ended up, I got a divorce. I was giving my life to God. I just was in the way that a lot of us think. And
Yeah,
any
yeah.
listeners, you know what I'm talking about when you're giving what we think. I'm giving everything to God. My energy, my time. I'm trying to go to church. I'm teaching a Sunday school class. I'm trying to do the right thing. Blah blah blah. But I was also at the same time where I was giving everything to God, I was also holding everything from God.
Mm-hmm.
All of the things that were inside of me that were, sins, ways of life, the hurt. We can make gods and idols out of our wounds.
Yeah, yep.
And but anyway, all of those things, and I got to a place where I just couldn't take it anymore. I ended up calling someone here at POA, and I said, I'm holding on by a fingernail, and I meant it. Like I'm literally about to lose my mind. I I mean I'm going to have a breakdown. Like I really really was scared, that I'm not going to make it through this. And but anyway, so we decided to come here for a little bit of time, me and my current wife, and I was like, we'll come here for a year and let's get things settled, and we're gonna get healing and get our focus, and then we'll figure out where we want to live, because Alexandria, Louisiana is not where we're supposed to be. I mean, we too big for this town. I mean,
Right.
God's got plans for us. I mean,
Right.
you can in 10 minutes you can be anywhere in this whole city. And when I first moved here, that's one of the things I hated. And after about a year, I was like, dude, this city's so cool.
Yeah.
I could be anywhere in 10 minutes.
From the north side, the south side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, coming from from Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway. So what happened here though is I tried to run from God, and a lot of ways. And I say run from God. I think the more accurate way to put it is I was so frustrated with life, with the monotony of have a couple wins and then a couple losses is what it felt like. It was just this perpetual cycle of ups and downs when I just was making no ground really. And so I was hitting major depression, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life, what God wanted to do, and then man, I just backslid. I was like, I came here for healing. I'm barely going to church. I don't want to go to church. I'm like, church is where I've experienced some of the worst hurts in my life. I mean, it's just even through all of those things, and that's just the truth. I mean, but I got to a place where, by the grace and mercy of God, the Lord gave me a dream, and this is probably the highlight of my whole testimony. It came in a dream, and I dreamed that I was in an old White House, and there were all these cursed objects, like this mic or a lamp or a vase, and some things were very old antiques. Now I used to kind of collect antiques, and I still find them intriguing. Just something that's lasted hundreds of years. It's like what have you seen in life? I mean, I know what I've seen in this short amount of time. Ain't no telling what you've seen. But anyway, but I knew that these objects were cursed and had this like demonic strongholds with them, and just being around them, it was my whole environment of my house was just, it was like under a curse. And so I was like, I've got to get these things out of here. I feel this evil presence. And so I started taking all of these things out of my house, and the house just felt like so clean. It was great. And then the Lord spoke to me in my dream and said, "You've done well. You did great.
Wow.
You're gonna make it now. You're gonna be happy. You feel this content feeling. You're gonna be content." He was pleased with me. He told me he was pleased with me. He said, "You don't have to do anything else. Maintain this, and you're gonna make it." And I knew what he was telling me. I'm heaven bound at this place, you know. And I started to walk towards these stairs that were in this house. But the Lord told me, he said, "I have one more thing for you, or something else for you. You don't have to do it. It's not a requirement. But I have something else for you, but it's going to cost you greatly. It will be very hard to find." And I had just ran through my house pulling out all of these things, and I was like, I can find it. You know, there's a little more into that story, but for time's sake, I'm not going to go into it. But I said I want it, and I said I'm going to go try to find it. I started going up to these stairs. I turned around down to these stairs, and looked down behind me, and there were all of these ministers in their suits and ties, and they said, "Hey, how did you get up there? How did you get there?" You know. Now I told them, I said, "I cleaned out my house." I said, "All of that junk, you can see I don't have anything else in there." You know, so I cleaned out my house. Then I started looking, and I couldn't find this other thing that God had for me. And I went outside, and I walked out the doors. And then if anybody has ever seen, it's like the old American prairie land that's just is yellow grass as far as the eye can see, and the hills. And I mean, just I was like, "There's no way I can find this. There's no way." Well, I continued to keep looking. Next thing I know, I'm digging on the outside of the house, close to the foundation of the house, and I'm digging down, and I'll go about 6 feet, which is, you know, about the size of a grave, you know. But I found what I was looking for. And I remember I picked it up, and I was like, I found it. And I looked up, and then standing up there, looking down at me was my son. And I went to hand it to him, and I woke up like that. I knew it was from God. I didn't understand everything at the time, and frankly, I just kind of brushed it off and was like, "We'll see what happens." You know, I'm not like in this real receptive time of my life right now. I'm kind of like, you know. But couple years later, so this goes back to where we were, because I was living in those condos at the time that you were talking about.
Right.
When I had that dream. Well, we went to go and buy a house. We bought a house over here in our garden district. It's an older home, and it was a white house, and it was an older house, and I just wasn't even thinking about that dream during that time. But we bought this house. I had all these plans. I'm like, I'm gonna fix this place up, because when I walked in, it was just like I could just see, okay, man, I'm gonna change this. We're gonna tear this wall out. We're gonna do all of this. Anyway, it was just perfect for what I was looking for. But I remember sitting in that driveway. I was doing some drugs. I was drinking. I was numbing, you know, doing for whatever reason, you know, we do those things, and but toiling and struggling on the outside. Some of you, "Oh, that guy's using drugs," but God sees all of it, so He's like, sees, "Oh, this guy's doing drugs," and then he's going home at night and he's crying. He's just like, "I can't take this, man. God, what do I do?" You know, He sees all of that. We don't know all that about everybody, but anyway. So I was in the driveway of that house, and the dream came back to me, and we were getting ready to begin. I'm sitting there struggling with life and just saying, I don't know what to do. Well, the Lord brought this back to me, this dream, and He said, "This is the place where you're going to accomplish what I showed you in that dream." And then He revealed to me, you know, what that dream was about. And all of those cursed objects in that dream were idols, sins, things in my life that I had never dealt with, The antique ones, he was like, those are old. Those are generational. He said, those things have been passed down. These other things, you pick those up along the way. But you're going to get all of those things out of your life. Some are your fault. Some are not your fault. Doesn't matter. They're in your house, and they're killing you. And this is the place that you're going to do this. And then I had a very sobering thought, voice, whatever. I knew it was the way that God speaks to me. And he said, I'm not telling you that you will not make it to heaven. But if you don't do this now, you will miss your calling. And I knew he meant it. So I set out to do just that. I wasn't pursuing ministry. I wasn't pursuing gain from people, clout, reputation, image, anything. Images. I'm ready to kill image. All of it. So I set out to say, what does it mean to be in a relationship with God? What does it really, really mean? Why? When do I get power over these things that I've been struggling with? Pornography that I was exposed to when I was 5 years old. These things that were just normal. When is it over? And I was determined. I was like, I will not be one person in my home and then another person at church on Sunday. And I set out to get that junk out of my life. I got rid of those addictions, drugs, alcohol, pornography. I mean, I'm not ashamed to talk about it. In fact, I'm passionate about talking about that because it's a spirit. It's a stronghold. I can't tell you the force behind that spirit and everything that hinges upon getting power over that. Sexual addictions and sexual spirits are, those are pivotal. You look back 6,000 years ago, that's what was killing relationship with God, and it's still doing it today. And we can justify things. I get it, but I'm telling you, man, that was one of the when I set out to get over that, it was like then I was able to deal with all the other stuff, because that separates you from God. It hinders. Now God's always there. We could go into that another time, but I can tell you the effects that it will have on your relationship with God are so immense that it's so difficult, almost futile to deal with other things. I just, because it's such a stronghold and it's so powerful. But anyway, as I got that out of my life, and I went and saw a guy, a professional, and and I was like, hey, he said, I can help you. I said, look, man, I'm not here to get 99% clean. I said, I want 100%. I'm not playing around. I'm not joking. It was a stronghold in my life, and I never thought that it was. I never really thought that it was until I set out to not do it, not look at pornography or not do anything like that. And it was like just such a way of life that, and everybody that I knew, struggled with that. And so I thought it was just something that we do and we just don't talk about, But anyway, you realize how bound you are by things when you try not to do it, even something as simple as fasting. I can go without eating and go about my day and be trucking along and not really thinking about food and be like, oh man, it's 2:00. I need to get some food. If I'm fasting that day, I'm thinking about food in my sleep, and I wake up, I'm like, oh my God, I need some food. I'll eat a hot dog right now.
Is it time? Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so just working in and moving those things out of my life. Dustin, that's what I focused on for several years, was a consistent prayer life with God, getting things out of my life that I've had. What came next after dealing with that issue of pornography was, man, forgiveness. All of these things that I had bottled up, that I was holding against my dad and my parents and everything, just like utter forgiveness was just pouring from me, and our relationship is just amazing. It's healed. It's awesome to see what God's doing in my life with all of this. But I know that what God wanted to do was to do a work in my life, but more than that was to have a real relationship. And I'm still on that pursuit of saying, what does it mean to be in covenant with God, to be in relationship with Him? And I'm going to continue to do that. And so that's what you are seeing, is some fruits of those years of being in secret, the years of cleaning stuff out, and the remodeling that was taking place on the inside. God gave me an outward manifestation of what was taking place on the inside. I fixed up that old White House from the time we lived in there for 4 years. The time I moved in to the time I left, for 4 years, I was working on that home.
Wow, 4 years.
Yeah. Anyway,
That and I started a couple of times to jump in, but I'm so glad I didn't, because there are so many recurring themes, and a lot of them were undealt with hurt and some of the anger stuff and things that you were exposed to as a young child. And then when you went to the church in Georgia, you had that encounter with God, but you still hadn't dealt with the things that were, and honestly, what you were doing was, I mean, those were walls that were built up because you felt safe behind those, whether it was drugs, whether it was anger, whether
yeah.
it was whatever it was, you had an encounter with God, which was, but what's so interesting, Curt, is He had His hand on you through every foster situation, through the adoption. You may have been rejected by, but God was protecting, and He had His hand on you through every single thing, to Georgia, to Alexandria, Louisiana. That who would want to move here? What we have here is the greatest church on the planet.
Amen.
But
Yeah.
outside of that, yeah. And then to see He brought you to this place, little old Alexandria, and to see what He's done over the last 3 to 4 years, what you've been willing, that has to give so many people such hope, Curt, that if it's anger they're dealing with, I mean, you just went through a gamut of about 100 things, bro. And I'm
A bunch
exaggerating,
of them. Yeah.
but
No, you're
but
right.
and then to see what God is doing, and I know you would never. I know you would never toot your own horn or brag, but I mean, Curt is used in the gifts mightily. He sing. You kind of make me a little sick, Curt. I'm having a little bit of a little envy here, because you sing. You're on the front line now singing. Mightily using the gifts. And God is opening doors for you. And really, see, on the serious, to see, because I've known some of those things because of the last conversation we did and the recording we did, but some of it, a little of it you shared, but I haven't known it as deep. And to see and hear it again and just recall it is what I'm trying to say. It's fresh now. And honestly, Curt, there has been such a transformation over the last, and it's been like, it's rapid, it's turbo speed, it's like you're at like Mach speed, and it's beautiful to see what God has taken, the vessel that was, man. I pray anybody out there that feels like they're so unclean or unworthy, or in a situation that God could never use them, will hear this and something will resonate. And I'm so glad I didn't interrupt you, because you just kept going and answering the questions that I was. I will say, I will ask this, and you kind of said the dream was it, but I want to know. It's been such a miraculous transformation. Um, what would you say to somebody out there who's like, man, I hear him. I I heard what he said. I'm so glad that it's amazing what God did for him. But what is one small practical step they could take if they're out there fighting any of the things that you just talked about? A small practical thing step that they could take so that God could begin to do in their lives what He's done in your life.
Read your Bible and pray first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
As I mean, much of a cliche as that might sound, we've heard it, we've heard it, we've heard it. I mean, that was pivotal for me, especially when life is so unpredictable. And I know I'm sweating, and it's not going to be a distraction. People can just watch me sweat and bare my soul.
That's
But
it.
I'm here to be as real
Passionate.
as it is. I mean, we don't have time. I don't have time to waste. God is not short on mercy. He's short on time, though.
Yeah.
The time is running out. But so I needed some kind of a constant in my life. I don't know what's going to happen next Tuesday or tomorrow or whatever, outside of the fact that, God willing, I'm going to make my coffee in the morning and I'm going to read my Bible before I pick up my phone, and I'm going to talk to the Lord. And I don't care. And listen, I used to want to wake up and get the crusties out of my eyes and have my coffee and scroll on TikTok or Facebook and let the caffeine hit me. And then I'm going to talk to the Lord if I got time, or I'll pray on the way to church.
Yeah.
I mean, on the way to work, or on the, whatever, way to church, whatever. But that was absolutely pivotal in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I started out with 5 minutes, whatever it was. Even on some mornings, I was going to rush. I'm reading the scripture. I'm going to stop and God, I'm going to acknowledge Him. But that is happening. Mm. Listen, when I was traveling, and I'm gonna hold myself accountable, because I'm gonna sit here and talk about it, to make me do this, continue to do this. But I mean, when I was traveling, I had to catch an early flight, 4 a.m. flight out in Ann Arbor. So doing my calculations, I need 30 minutes, get up, get out of here. So that means I'm gonna have at least 30 minutes with God. Set your alarm for 2:30. If that's what it takes. But before I get going, I want to read my word. I love coffee. So I'm gonna throw in something I like. And I'm gonna drink a little coffee, dog tired, but I'm gonna open my word before I do that. I'm gonna pray, and I'm gonna talk to God. And I can control that. I can't control everything else that happens out there, but I can control that. But that develops relationship. Mm-hmm. It develops some kind of a constant in your life amongst everything that's so unpredictable. But when you do that, though, God's going to speak to you. Things will be revealed, mm-hmm. and you'll learn the things that try to take that motivation from you. And you're like, I want to combat that or whatever. But start a relationship with Him. The Bible says that my sheep know my voice. We gotta know His voice, man. Yeah. God speaks to everybody, differently. He's going to speak to you in your own way. Find out what it is.
Find out. Man, that is so good. But He will speak to you through everybody through His word. That's what when I came back and I had my moment, and it was 3 weeks in a jail cell, mm-hmm. Curt, for which I thought it was going to be a week at the time, and it turned out to be 3 weeks. But God spoke to me in that jail cell, and those who've heard my story know that He said, "You think this is bad?" He said, "Don't mess up again, because you won't be able to handle it." I mean, not in an audible voice, but the way He speaks to me,
yes,
He spoke to me very clearly. So I came back. And that's, I had people suggesting this and that and this and that, and they're good things, and they're not wrong, but for me, God wanted me to wake up at a very early time in the morning, just like you, and get in the Word
Yep.
and pray. Now I struggled at first to pray. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you.
Yeah.
I would read the Word, and I would read a chapter here and a chapter here, and it was kind of checking the box for me at first. But man, little by little, but I was forming a habit,
Yep.
and I was forming something that I knew if I started off with, and then man, it just slowly developed into something like you said, a
Yeah.
relationship, and then that prayer life just started becoming more than 5 minutes, and it just started, and that seems so hard, but like you said, if they'll take just a small step and just start small
Yep.
and say, okay, this is the first thing. Bishop preached a message a while back, and I kind of adopted this theory on tithing, and tithing on the first 10% of your check that comes in, not the last 10% after you paid the bills. And a light just kind of hit me in the head and said, that's what you need to do with your day too. Give me the first portion of your day. And so I feel like if I give him I'm the same way. I won't look at my phone. I've been texting you. I don't have my phone. I don't look at it until I'm done with this. But he'll bless me on the rest of my day.
Yeah.
And so I kind of applied that same principle. So I think you're dead on it. I don't think anybody can go wrong with starting their day off with
Yeah.
small.
And even if for some people, that would rather pray at night or something, man, that's totally cool too. But having some kind of a consistency with your relationship with God is fundamental, and it will change everything. I used to pray, oh my God, God, use me, use me, use me. I get these, I'll be reading the Word, and God's giving me these revelations, and I'm just seeing use me, use me, use me. But through growth, through time, through experience, things that I'm seeing now, and that prayer is different. I pray, God, use me as I'm able to handle it. Use me as you grow me. I don't want to go somewhere I'm not ready for. And I mean it. And hey, if I feel something stirring in me, which I do, I feel it now.
Yeah.
I feel it now. God's calling me even to a higher place. I mean, there's more that he has. But I know that I'm saying, God, don't take me to that place unless this is ready. And I know that at every level there's another devil. There's all of that. I believe that there is. But, to that next, I'm telling that devil to that next level, it's going to be a bad Curt, man, because I'm going to know who's with me. I'm not going to have that same mindset. Those things that trip me up, they're not going to trip me up again. I'm telling you. I heard this, and I think this is very appropriate to insert this in right now. I was talking to my brother. Actually, he had sent me a message that a preacher had preached, and something like that. I heard him quote this, that we are always one step away from pride. Always one step away from saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But we walk a fine line, Dustin. I'm realizing all of this. When we get this flesh in check, we have to overcome all of those doubts and that flesh that's weighing, is this me or is this God? And all, we got to get that under control, because when we're in the moment and when we need to hear from God, we don't have time or the ability to listen to two different voices and do all of that. Like, I need to be listening to what God's telling me right now. I need to be engaged in the Spirit. So I'm already putting my motives into check. God already knows, you don't have to use me today, God. And if I'm good with you, I'm good. I'm not trying to go out there and impress a bunch of people. I only have one person to impress. That's him.
Him.
That's it. That's it. But I don't want to get off on a tangent, but I feel it.
No, you go.
Anyway, go ahead.
You go. And I feel the passion, and I feel the what's flowing through you, and that's what's so. We started off talking. I started off talking about this because I genuinely, I don't, and it's not like three years ago you were some, you know, you had grown a lot 2 or 3 years ago, but it's just like Curt the last 2 years and the last year and the last 6 months, it's almost like technology. It's Mach speed. I mean, what God's doing, and I really just wanted to tell you that and affirm you, because
appreciate that,
it's
man.
evident that you surrendered. I mean, and you're passionate about it right now. The way you're talking about it, you've given him your all, and you're pursuing him like there's nothing else.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
nothing else matters, and it's paid. You see the fruits of that, but it's also important not as Bishop said Sunday. Don't drag up what's God's put under the blood, but for people to hear that and hear what he's brought you out of. I mean, we read about David's sin, of adultery. Thank God we have those examples, and for people to hear a living, breathing Curt.
Yeah, man.
That's, if it helps one person out there, man, and gives them hope and encouragement that they have something and God's hand. There's nobody that's still breathing that's too far gone, man.
No, nobody. That's powerful. So I've been studying a lot about covenant and praying about covenant, and there's I'm actually going to be speaking on covenant soon. I'll give you the details, but in Sister Vesta's class, and so there's the Lord was dealing with me heavily about covenant last year, and I won't go into a ton of things, but we've got to understand, what does it mean, though, is what I was asking myself. What does it mean to be in covenant with God? In the gist of it, Dustin, it's a relationship. What covenant looks like is I got job offers in many other places in the country, making a lot more money than what I'm making right here. But what covenant looks like, hearers, any listeners, it looks like that's okay. I'll go broke staying where you want me to be, God. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to be in covenant. That's the manifestation of covenant. We can talk about it a lot. You want something real, when you said practical, like that's practical. That's where I'm at. I watch myself like really struggling sometimes with business at times, because I want to be home. I want to do, see my family. I've got church and things that I'm juggling, but say sometimes I got to travel, man. I'm good with that, but at the end of the day, I know what I've done in other places. I've made a lot of money in other cities, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm not leaving where God wants me to be, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's like what our bishop just preached.
Temporal versus eternal. Yeah.
Temporal versus eternal. Exactly. I'm not guaranteed tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave what God's doing here to go chase money. That's what covenant looks like. It's those things. It's doing.
That's
okay,
beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, God, you're going to allow them to do these things in their life, but you don't want me to. Okay. That's fine.
Right.
Okay, but you gotta that's covenant. That's relationship. I'm not gonna sit here and question you, God, over all of that. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people in this world have Isaacs that they never sacrificed on the altar? They're living with the promises that they just never fully gave over to God. That's all of our giftings, all of our talents, all of these things. Just, man, give it to him. But God wants to use us. And I went through these times of prayer and seeking God, because we gotta understand that this desire and motivation to be used in His kingdom and in the Spirit and all of that's of God. Now, the adversary will try to taint anything that God is doing, and then you got your old flesh that's the adversary's best friend sometimes, because you're like, what's in it for me? We're geared towards that, but it's a godly desire and motivation to be used, and so we need to go with that. But it's our flesh that gets impatient, and the devil will play on that.
Gets
Anyway,
ahead of him, yeah.
right, but there's so many parables, and like about the talents. I mean, it was like it was considered wickedness to not multiply what God had given this man. I mean, God wants and expects us to do something, so that's all a godly desire. But it just comes down to honing in and understanding God's timing, trust in Him, the developmental process. Never neglect the developmental process of everything. I mean, we can get into a deep place, and with the Lord and in the Spirit, and realize, ooh, this is too deep, and we don't want to get discouraged. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, if we have the trust in Him to continue to pray, God, use me. I remember I got frustrated sometime, and I was like, Lord, if you're not going to do certain things in my life, then just take the desire away. And then I was like, oh, don't do that. Don't pray
Yeah,
that.
don't.
That was
Yeah,
myself.
yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
oh, that'd be stupid, And so I was like, I said, you know what? That's my flesh. So I said, God, let it be fire shut up in my bones. Let it drive me, because I feel you doing something in me. But man, getting that patience and just saying, I mean, God's going to do it. God's going to do it.
He's gonna do it.
He's going to do it. Yeah. And so, and I'm like, I'm at that place. So if I get called to do nothing, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to do something, but I trust that God is ordering my steps. I completely do trust that God is ordering my steps, and He's been helping me in this relationship with Him to have such a peace and a confidence and an anticipation, because I know God is going to do it. Whatever He promised, whatever He said, He's going to do it. I'm wanting to emphasize this because you had mentioned something about earlier about the Lord not breaking a promise.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's trusting, it's timing and patience, but it's like we were talking earlier. You were talking about idols and idols, getting the idols out of your life, and we were just talking about how God had promised Abraham Isaac. And so when God told Abraham, now I want Isaac back, Abraham had nothing to worry about, because Isaac was a promise.
Yeah.
Isaac was a promise that God had made to Abraham. So him walking up that, and he may have, that may be why he walked up that mountain knowing and having confidence, and Sarah was freaking out.
Yep.
I don't know. I know he was a great man of faith, so maybe he didn't know, but he had enough trust in God, whether God was going to take Isaac or not, but God wasn't going to break that promise.
Right.
And so he just wants and look, a lot of it is a big idol of everybody's, I think, is our time and our will. And I think that's one of the key things that you've, kind of at the end of this, that you've brought out is, man, you have the zeal and the fire, and say, God, yes, I'll say yes to whatever you want, but you also have the patience and the trust to know that He's going to do it, but in His timing. And if it's not yet, it's because He's preparing you for what's to come. And I'm there. I've been there. I thought 5 years I was ready to go bust, like Bishop says, bust hell wide open with a water pistol,
Yeah.
you know. And I look back, and if God had opened up a bunch of doors 5 years ago, it'd have been a colossal mistake.
Yeah.
Colossal.
Yeah.
If he would have done it 3 years ago,
Yeah.
you know. So Kurt, I think that's some of the wisest, and that's come through your relationship with God. That's blossomed exponentially over the last few years, and you've come to a place to you've given this up and you've given that, and the obvious, you know, once you give up the pornography and the drugs and the alcohol, really looking back, that's those things are they are hard in the moment, but those were easy. No, patience and will and control
Mm-hmm.
and going ahead of God. Me personally, I found that to be one of my toughest
Yeah.
things to overcome.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, different levels, different devils.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, I feel like putting down the drugs and the alcohol and the relationships and, you know, outside of marriage, and those things were easy to give up compared to some of the things I want to control.
Wow. That's loaded. And it's so real because we'll all deal with that stuff. Um, we we sense the urgency in the times, especially as we start growing and maturing. We look back over the years and think of all the things that we could have done different. I want to tell you something that I started looking at over this past week, and this would probably be a good place to end. This covenant relationship with God is everything. When if we want the real, true, authentic things of God and in the spirit, spiritual gifts. I'm talking about tongues, interpretation, healings, miracles. You want to hear from God. You want to have dreams. You want to be able to have discernment. You want to be used in that realm, or whatever realms it is that God has for you. You know, we need to position ourselves for that. We do, but what good is it without having a relationship with Him? I mean, so God will bring those things out, and I think those are some things that you're alluding to with me. You've seen God use me in the gifts, and Lord has been speaking to me. He's been showing me things in the spirit. But he's still teaching me. There's some things that He's been showing me, and now He's teaching me when to hold it and when to keep it. Okay, hold on. But I went through a lot of training in developing to know what was his voice. I wanted to have, really sharpened discernment and discernment of spirits and some things like that. And God was, giving me a burden for that. That's one of the ways God will speak to you. Man, it's on top of mind. It's in me. It's kind of burning in me. I can't kind of get away from it. But getting down in my daily prayer time, gotta have that. I'm walking through the process of, let me not have my motives. Let me lay these things down to you, God. I want to have discernment, and I feel like the Lord led me after my heart was in the right place. He said, now pray that you will have self-discernment first.
Wow.
If I can discern myself, then discerning other spirits is going to be much easier, because then I can know, when is this Curt? When is this God? Because I got a loud voice inside.
Yeah.
I got a loud
Flesh.
voice. Yes, yes. And so help me to know me. And the Bible says the heart is deceptive above all things.
Yeah.
So I can be completely feeling and thinking that I'm completely on the right track. Help me discern. So when I can discern between myself and God, discerning between somebody else and God is much easier. Because I hear His voice. I can do that. So on with the covenant things. I'm looking at this, and I'm going to be speaking on the Noahic covenant. And I started looking into some things. This is just a nugget, and I'll leave it at this. But I went to bed Friday night, had a dream that I was telling some people, God gave me this word, and this is in my dream, and He gave me what I need to teach on. But He said, God told me to tell people, you have a watermark. You bear a watermark. Digital creators, you know what a watermark is.
Mm-hmm.
That's your, that's the identity. It can't be copyrighted, but that just shows, this is yours. And so, there's so many things about a watermark, but what I was saying, when we were baptized, we had bear a watermark, in the spirit. What you can see in the spirit, they've got that watermark. They've been in there. So anyway, I was like, "Oh wow, that'll preach. This is great." And I woke up and the Lord spoke to me and said, "I created the first watermark with the rainbow. That was the very first watermark ever."
Wow.
So that was the sign of His covenant. So started looking at this, man. I never knew this. I'm gonna have to fact check because what I'm seeing is that a rainbow is a full circle, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that, so thank you for the confirmation. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a full circle, so we can only see part of it because of our position where we are. So that's why it can't be only a semicircle, because it's a covenant. And a covenant means there's no end. There's no end. It's a perpetual cycle. It can't be broken. He doesn't make broken promises, broken covenants. Of course, it's a circle. It made so much sense to me.
Wow.
It's and here's the thing. There's that old little fable. I started laughing about it. Man, there are people, oh, if I could just get to the end of the rainbow, we're going to find a pot of gold. Well, there is no end to the rainbow.
There is no end.
So no, that's one reason why it's not there. But
And I'll take His promise over the gold any day,
then that was it. And that was it.
Oh.
When you nailed it. That's the thing. We look and are trying to find where the continuation of that covenant is. And the whole time we're missing the fact that the gold is the covenant.
The gold is the covenant.
That's the treasure.
That's
You're in covenant with God. That's the gold.
wow.
What are we trying to do? Trying to just see in the future, thinking that that's going to bring us some kind of a sense of peace? No. You're in covenant with Him.
That's
Relax.
what more do you need?
The only way you can see that full circle is from a high place. And you go to your mind goes to will we mount up with wings like eagles. If we wait on the Lord, if we trust in Him, He'll take us to that place, that high place. But when you go to the high place with God and you see it is a whole circle, guess what? You didn't even need to see it at that time.
No.
You're like, I know it's there.
Yeah.
I just know it's there, man. I'm in covenant with Him. And the other thing that I thought was really, really awesome is that in order to see a rainbow, from what I could see from studying, is that the sun is behind you and shining forward, and then it'll refract through the raindrops. And I just like, wow, that makes so much sense. To see the covenant, He's behind you. He took care of everything in your past. His glory shines on your past. I'm covered. Back there, I don't got to go and look at my past. I don't got to go look at my mistakes. None of that. I already know His glory is back there.
Mm-hmm.
And He's shining and just showing me you're in covenant. Just keep walking.
Wow.
Just keep walking. That's all I'm doing. Dustin,
Just
that's
keep
it.
walking.
Just go. I'm walking towards the covenant. I don't have to run. I don't need to. He's going to show me what I need to see, when I need to see it, and I stand on it. That's it.
That's a revelation, and we won't run it for Lane's Sunday school class, but I guess we'll wait to air till after that, because that's powerful. Not that they'd all see it anyway, but just in case. But that's so powerful, and I think, Curt, what's been so neat about this conversation tonight is we've covered from, if you're hopeless, if you're in the middle of an addiction or any kind of sin, or at a place where you just think you're just ready to give up, like you said, you're, right there. Or if you're walking with God and you're looking for His will, I think we've covered both ends of the spectrum, and this will help anybody out there,
Yeah.
wherever they are in their walk with God or lack of thereof. They might not even be walking with God. I think, man, everything we've talked about tonight, you've been on fire.
Oh, shoot.
And I
I
appreciate,
hope so.
because man, you've lifted me up tonight in my
Oh,
spirits. You've ministered to me. So I know
likewise.
this will
You too.
minister to somebody out there. So I just want to appreciate you. I know at some point we're going to have you back, and then when we do, I know you're going to have just greater things going on at that time, because it just, like I said, it just seems like you're at Mach speed, um, and I can't wait to hear and see what God does. And for those of you watching, Curt will be hosting a closed Zoom call in a couple of weeks after this airs. So if you want to interact or talk to Curt, he will be available. So just go to www.highhopeministries.com and fill out the contact information page and put in Curt Cobb Zoom, and we will send you an invite. So Curt, thank you again. We appreciate you,
Thank
and
you, man.
man, we always love having you. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your prayers, your support. Most of all, thanks for being a friend, man.
Oh, likewise.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, man.
Y'all, you and Crystal, are gold for, and lift me and encourage me, and Leanne and we appreciate it.
Well,
I
you
love
keep
you, man.
doing what you're doing. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the future, but not. I mean, where we are right now is amazing, and we're going to relish every little bit of it. But I do know that there's great things coming. Great things coming.
In God's time, man.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, brother, and thank you all for watching, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.